And I could graph this differently if I wanted to. So right in here, if I wanted to start changing this, I could click this plus sign. What I'm going to do actually though is I'm going to delete this chart. I'm going to delete this chart. So notice if I deleted that, nope, didn't delete. I selected that, didn't delete. I selected those lines there, the lines deleted. I select my series on the bottom, the series deleted. To delete the chart, I actually got to make sure I'm clicking on something other than an element within the chart. I'm deleting all these things inside the chart. Finally, I just click the chart and I'm able to delete the chart. Now let's change this chart. So I click the chart, this little plus sign shows up. I click the plus sign and I have a few choices here. So I can start playing with things. I want to show the axes, I don't want to show the axes. You know, I want to show the chart title, I don't want to show the chart title. Right? The legend, I want to show the legend, I don't want to show the legend. So I can play with that stuff, but if I wanted to do something really cool, like I wanted to see maybe my stores down here by month so I could see how did each store do over the entire year. This view right here is real good for me to see how did my entire company do over each month and which store really stood out. Here the green store, London, was really standing out. But if I wanted to see how each store did over the year, it's harder for me to look at, like, say, green and get an idea how green did over the entire year. So is there some way I could group these by year? So watch, I'm going to put the stores down here and the months up there. Switch row column data. Switch row column data. So now I'm just basically switching the row and column data. It's just looking at it in different ways. And so now I have all of my stores and it shows me each month in the store and how the store did for every month in the year. So I could real quickly see how did each store do. We could also change this chart to make it a stacked column. And this is what a stacked column looks like. And that's a pretty cool look, you know, where I have the month and then in the month I see each store. I could also, again, click on my chart, go up to design and choose switch row column. And there we go. I have my rows, I have my columns now, my stacked columns by location. And within each location, I could see how they did in every month. And then I could also see, you know, how my overall business did month to month. So some really useful tools. What if I didn't want to see these little data labels right there? Or this blue one is really hard to see what's on the blue. And I could just go up to home and I could say, make that color white. And now that white stands out. Or if I didn't want these labels at all, click the plus sign, come over here, maybe take off data labels. Well, it took off that one and now it took off all of them. I clicked it again. I could put them back on, but to get that blue to look the way I wanted it, to have white text there, I'd have to click that once more. Here's a stacked bar by city. So instead of a column chart, we could do a bar chart, and just a really different look here. Now, this is one of the interesting things about when you graph data. You could start to tell a story with data. And the way you visually represent your data can tell different stories, even though it's the same data. So exactly the same data, right? But visually, it kind of leaves a little bit of a different impression. Or exactly the same data right here, right? And it leaves a little bit of a different impression. Like this one, if I compare pie charts, like here, you know, the gray, San Francisco, is doing pretty well. But with this one, you know, is there some way where I can make it stand? So like, I don't like gray, maybe. I don't like the San Francisco store. So I'm putting this presentation together. I could click on my chart and I could see what options I have over here. And if I don't see any of the options just right here, I could kind of go over there and click that arrow and choose more options, and I'll launch this thing over here, this panel where I have even more choices. So I'm just showing all the different places you could start finding settings to change your chart. And then I could come over here and I could start looking at the different options, and there's alignment, there's something called 3D format. I might look at that 3D format, and then I could come here, width, height, depth, contour, material, there's reset, you know, and here's coloring options. What about if I right click that right there? 3D rotation. And let's try, you know, changing this a little bit. What about if I change that, right? And what about if I change that? Same thing. What about if I change this? Well, if I do this, it looks like the San Francisco store is doing great. But if I do this, can't go any farther that way. Let's try going this way. you know, that kind of like makes the blue store stand out. It sort of diminishes the San Francisco store. Notice that the San Francisco store even kind of has a blah color. So if I really wanted just to kind of like unconsciously bag on San Francisco store, I actually love San Francisco, but you know, that's one of the ways I could manipulate my visual representation to you know, have them look diminished. Just some of the psychological factors that go into creating images. So more and more charts here. Here is a donut chart, so that's just what that looks like. I kind of like that. Reminds me of like something, a life ring you would see on a boat. Here are scatter charts. For a long time, I was kind of like, scatter charts? Don't understand them, don't know how to do them. And it took me a while to get my head around scatter charts. So what exactly is